Again, which will be pretty au fait with what this is. So we've got a ratio, I've set it to 20:1, which is a harsh ratio, it goes up to 100:1, okay? So it pretty much will act as a limiter. So if you leave it on 100:1 now, so it basically means for every decibel over the threshold, it will only output 100th of what it was going over by, okay? So it's really, really vastly reduced. So we bring the threshold up or down, and we can see at the moment my voice isn't really loud enough to trigger the compressor. But if I start to go louder, what you'll notice is my voice will be louder to you because you stood in front of me, but it won't come any louder through the PA. So if I start to go louder like that, whoa! It never came through the speaker any louder than it was in the first place. It's being completely limited by the compressor. Okay, the auto function on here is really good, just like on Logic. The tech is so good now in terms of how it looks ahead at the signal. It processes it like that. So the auto function is really good, but you can turn it off and do your attack, hold and release manually if you'd rather. Okay. So that's that. EQ. So the EQ is much easier to use with a laptop plugged in because you can just drag it around like Logic, just like you used to. The screen on here isn't touch screen, it's one of the budget cutting corners that Behringer do to keep the price down. And you can't plug a mouse in, which again, simple things will be made this desk a little bit more friendly. So what you have to do is you've got these rotary pots here, so you can select the curve you're dealing with, the section of the EQ you're dealing with, 1, 2 or 3. You'll notice that you have shortcut hot buttons here to it as well. Okay. See there,
you only got a maximum of
they're
4.
labelled, whereas then they're labelled, they're numbered on here. Because mid-high might not necessarily be mid-high, because I can actually move that down here if I wanted to. So it's not mid-high anymore, it's a low EQ. So I would rather those short buttons, those hot buttons were numbered rather than labelled. Because let's say you've got lots of problems happening down the low end, so you've got all 4 filters down the low end being used. Those names are completely useless then. I mean, you can see which relates to which and turn it on and off and just see quickly, but personal thing. So you select the band you want to work with. So let's use this number 2, this yellow one. You decide the type of curve, so you can do shelf, high pass, low pass, various curves. So let's just use a PEQ, which is the standard parametric bell curve EQ. We then decide, let's put a bit of a boost on first so you can see it. Then decide the Q factor. So you make it fatter or thinner, so you can sort of precision EQ or a more broad band EQ. And then we decide whether we're boosting or if we're cutting. Now the annoying thing about these is I wish they were speed related. So if you turn it faster, it doesn't do it any faster. Actually, you get a better result turning it slowly and efficiently like that. If you try and turn it fast, it doesn't go any faster, which is a really frustrating thing about the desk. And then you've got your frequency sweep. Okay. And then you've got your output.
How evasive would you make an EQ if in a live performance setting?
So, good question, and there's several layers of EQ. So, is it a monitor problem? Is it a global front of house problem? Is it a specific channel problem? So, for instance, let's say it's a problem on a monitor. I go to my buses, I select the monitor, I've got a parametric EQ on the monitor, okay, just like I've got on the channels. Or I can go to my effects. This is hard upside down. And I can go to one of my EQs here, and I can insert it onto a bus. So let's say I've inserted, I won't do it, but let's say I've inserted that onto a channel, onto bus 8.
So that is like putting it on the effect strip, basically.
Yeah. So now I've inserted a full graphic EQ onto that. And the cool thing about this, again, I'm upside down and in practice, GEQ flip button. I might have to come around that side for a second. Yeah, GEQ and faders. There we go. So now this section is the EQ.
No way.
Okay, if you want to reset something, you press the select button. Select button? Or the solo button? No. Oh, I swear pressing the select used to reset it. Might have to check that. You can roll it out across the whole thing as well. There used to be a...
It says small, there's a... I think it says... No, it's scroll.
Scroll, no, that moves it across the spectrum. So let's screw up this EQ loads. So that's just showing a representation of the EQ like that. So what you do when you rock up, is it double tap it? Mute button. That makes sense. So by muting it, you're basically turning off that stuff in the EQ. That makes sense. I knew there was a button somewhere to quickly reset it. But what you do when you go to a venue, you tune the monitors. Were you all in ears when you did the gig? Yeah. So wedges are a bit, not a thing of the past. A lot of bands still use them, but they're not used as much. So you turn up to a venue, you blast out some pink noise, and you tune the desk, monitors and front of the house using pink noise. And what you're basically doing by that is you're negating the room as an input to the sound, which then means actually your presets from the last venue, if you've tuned the room properly, your presets from the last venue you did last night should just load up and work. If you didn't tune the desk and the PA to the room, you'd load up your presets from last night, which were designed to the room from last night, to this completely different room, and the problems are going to be different. But because you've now basically flattened the response of the room by tuning it on the desk, you can just roll out the same preset every night. Okay, we will learn how to do that. We use pink noise because it's the same energy per octave, whereas white noise is completely random and you can't guarantee at any one point how much energy will be in an octave. So we need something that's evenly weighted across all the frequencies. Pink noise and white noise sound very similar. Pink noise is just a bit brighter. So yeah, so I can EQ it on the channel. I can add it as an insert. I can EQ it on the bus. I can EQ it on the main. So the main, again, same difference. I can go to my effects, and on here I can route it to a graphic EQ on the main. Okay. Or there's also a standard EQ on the main as well. So it just depends where the problem is. So like I said, if you've tuned the room, the monitor's already tuned, the house is already tuned, for some reason you've got one of the microphones, you've got a random feedback that you didn't have any other time, I'd go through, perhaps use my RTA, use my ears, I'd find that frequency and I'd notch it out on the channel EQ. Okay. That would be probably the best process of working through. That's a lot of stuff down the line though. That's far down the line in terms of where we're at now and that's like, you'll be pretty comprehensively trained if you go into a live sound and you're blasting out pink noise, tuning the monitors, tuning the front of the house, inserting graphic EQs onto buses and stuff like that. That's where you'll be at the end of the year, hopefully.